Hi, Zahid.
Hi. First-time caller, so I'm a little nervous. Sporadic listener.
Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, I was just... I understand this is about the cost of living crisis, but throughout it all, we seem to be ignoring the lessons of 2003, that this is a legal war. So we're kind of selling our morals down the river here.
Well, the Prime Minister didn't ignore that. He said in the speech this morning, he alluded to Iraq, and he talked about, he said, if I'm going to send British armed forces into danger, I want them to know that they're going into danger in a legal war and one that has been properly thought out. He said that just this morning.
Exactly. So how can we even think about getting involved in this war?
Well, we are involved. We're not involved aggressively, but we are involved.
We are involved. So I think the Iranians may take a different view if we start sending warships to the theatre of war.
Yeah, because the ambassador...
It's more difficult to argue the fact that we're not participants or belligerents.
Yeah.
And my biggest worry is if we continue down this route, and by all people who are close to the negotiations were saying that Iran was actually rolling over quite a lot in their negotiations, but Israel did not want to. That's not the result they wanted.
I don't think we know. The truth is we don't know, Zahid. I've heard the opposite as well.
It will come out at some point. We will find out what the transcripts were, etc. at some point. But America isn't exactly a reliable source of information, is it? Trump is not exactly a reliable source of information. Yeah, neither is Iran. But at this moment in time, if people were to look up how obvious the lies are, I think they would allude to Trump being the main actor here. But by the by, that's separate. My biggest concern is if we do not now, as Europe, I think Europe is probably the most sensible actor in this at the moment, can't get people to come round the table and come to a solution, we're going to end up with a disintegrated Iran at some point, a migrant crisis, and we do not need any migrants from war zones. I mean, it's been 20 years that we're still living with the errors that we made. And regardless of the cost of living right now, another 20 years of migrant crises in the Middle East and people coming over is going to cost us a lot more, not only from a monetary perspective, but from an emotional perspective of the unity of our own country.
Yeah. Can I ask you as well, the Iranian ambassador to the UK said to Andrew Marr last week, in terms, he said, Iran does not consider itself to be at war with the UK. That's what he said to Andrew Marr. This morning, Lord West, former head of the Admiralty, now in the House of Lords, he said, to all intents and purposes, look, we are at war with Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is being blocked by Iran, attacked by shipping in it being attacked by Iran. Defensively, they say, of course, and understandably. They're using their main weapon at this point, aren't they, given the destruction of their military installations? But he says the reality is that strait is a British concern and needs defending. What goes on in it is every bit a British concern as any of the other ones that we are currently defending with our actions over the skies in the Middle East. Do you buy that argument at all?
No, I can see the value in that argument, but isn't there an alternative way to deal with this rather than sending warships? Isn't it pressure on Trump to say, look, I mean, there's two countries, USA and Israel, and then there's probably another 100 countries who do not want to see this happen. I think
we can separate Israel off from America at this point. I think even if Donald Trump stopped tomorrow, Israel could easily continue what it's doing in the south of Lebanon, and it could easily continue at least elements of what it's doing in Iran. Because it's a depleted Iran, isn't it? Militarily.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the consequences of that that's for Israel to deal with.
Yeah.
We need to understand that if we keep getting involved in wars and not looking at diplomatic solutions, when has a war given us a solution that we're actually happy with?
Yeah, and it was interesting to see. Some have in the end, but horrible human cost, Zahid, but some have. It's interesting to see on the front page, I think it was the FT this morning, other countries are in discussion with Iran about access to the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, America isn't one of them. Israel isn't one of them. I wonder whether Britain is likely to be one of them. I don't know. I mean, that may be a choice that Keir Starmer is looking at. But if things get as acute as my guest Nick Butler was suggesting they will get if this war goes on and if the Strait is impeded for much longer and for a long period of time, for months, even a year, then we'll be in big trouble with our fuel, oil, petrol supplies. Thanks, Zahid, for your call. Zahid in Manchester, 146. Ruth says rationing. Can you imagine how rationing electricity could even impact radio shows? The impact is so far-reaching. I don't know whether Ruth is relishing that idea or not. I can't tell. Jake says we shouldn't bail Trump out. It might actually do him good to face the consequences of his actions for once. Iran has been on America's to-do list for a while, but it's only happening now to change the news away from the Epstein files. Jonathan has called from Waltham Forest. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, Sheila. I feel very strongly about this. I feel that not one British soldier should lose their lives in defence of Israel and America. And it's very important that Israel are involved in this because they are the co-belligerents when it comes to this situation we're in. It's not just America. It's very important that we accept that. This is not just America.
No, I know. Are you responding to me saying, can I separate Israel off? Is that what you're responding to?
No, not at all.
Oh, because just to reiterate, when I said that, I wasn't trying to erase Israel from what's happening here or suggest it's not involved. Of course it is. I was suggesting that whatever America now decides to do, Israel, I think, is freer because of the degrading of Iranian military arsenal and sites. It's freer to attack Iran where it wishes to.
We have to remain, for once, on the sidelines. This is not our fight, even though we may be suffering economically because of it. It's very, very important that we know that the United States and Israel has had an interest in this conflict for more than almost 50 years for various reasons. It has nothing to do with us. We should not be dying on behalf of these two countries.
Well, Keir Starmer's just informed us that 92,000 UK nationals left the Middle East in the last 3 weeks to come home because of it. 300,000 remain because they live there, work there, whatever the reasons. So in that sense, it is in our interests. We also have actual strategic and business interests there as well. And that's why I'm still going to make the argument that the situation over the Strait of Hormuz could change, and I think it could force Keir Starmer to make a different decision.
It's very dicey. It really is very dicey because of what Trump did. But we have to, for one, exercise restraint. If you go back 20 odd years, or say almost 25 years ago, when the Twin Towers fell, it had nothing to do with us. I mean, when I last checked, the Twin Towers is in Manhattan. It's not down the road from the City of London. It had nothing to do with us. And the Americans do not need us as a military force. They use us, but they don't need us. We do not need to be fighting. Let's not forget, America was a republic. They rejected the British crown, didn't they, historically? So why are we fighting for their existence?
I'm trying to think of a comparison here to test your theory. What if we had looked on in Europe and said, not our problem, mate, about Hitler? What do you think would have happened?
We've got to stop doing this. We've got to stop running back to the Second World War.
No, I know. Sorry, you're right. I'm just trying to think of an example where just because something isn't under your nose in your front garden doesn't mean it's not your interest when it comes to international politics and war.
Sheila, if it was a genuine global world crisis where Dr. Evil somewhere in the world was threatening the world with nuclear weapons, that's completely different. Then
America says that the Ayatollahs are the Dr. Evils, and they are doing just that. And Israel says that, and others, not just in America and Israel, are afraid of that. Up to and including Obama trying to make that deal to contain that threat.
Well, the last Ayatollah who was killed recently put a fatwa on the development of nuclear weapons. He said it was un-Islamic, and he was killed by the Americans. So now his son is now in control. We have another problem.
But do you take as read what an Ayatollah and a fatwa says?
Again,
because the same Ayatollahs put a fatwa on Salman Rushdie, and as a result of it, 35 years later, he was almost stabbed to death on a stage in America. So these things do come close to home, Jonathan.
They do, but we have to. In a couple of weeks' time, the Americans are celebrating 250 years of their existence. Yeah. They turned their back on the British crown, on the British establishment, and we should not celebrate that. I know it's a long time ago, but we must accept that they don't accept the law that comes from.
Well, now you're guilty of what I was guilty of, and going back a bit too far.
But
for the present day decisions, I think your criticism of me raising the Second World War, and you were right to do so, was oh, come on, Sheila, stick with what's happening right now, and you could say that about the War of Independence in America as well.
Yeah, and do you know how many soldiers died in that conflict? More than 70,000 British soldiers died trying to hold on to the British rule in America. So we shouldn't be celebrating that. My point is that
who's celebrating it?
No, but apparently the King on the UK is going to raise a glass in honour of the.
That's diplomacy, isn't it? That's saying we're still, despite. Actually, isn't there something hopeful in that, Jonathan? Despite war and death and a rupture between our two nations, look at us now. Isn't there some hope in that?
I hereby raise a glass to the destruction of my ancestors. I mean, that's really quite daft, isn't it?
Whose ancestors?
King Charles's ancestors were defeated by the Americans. I hereby raise a glass to that event. Isn't that a bit daft?
I think it's grown up, isn't it? He's saying.
Well,
they weren't destroyed because we still have the monarchy, and it's still a head of state in many parts of the world and the Commonwealth. I think it's a sign of maturity to be able to do that. Just as when the Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen Elizabeth, went to Ireland and was able to raise a glass to people who'd been her sworn enemies and killed her relatives.
This is also true, but no war for Britain. We need to sit at home and puff it up and enjoy a cup of tea and biscuits.
What if you can't put the kettle on?
Then we're really in trouble, aren't we? Let's go to war.
What if you need to rub sticks together to make a cup of tea?
Well, then we're in trouble.
You'll be ringing my programme and saying, Sheila, I'm coming around for a cup of tea. And you'll be very welcome to, Jonathan.
Bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Jonathan in Waltham Forest. We went round the houses there, didn't we? The various wars of independence and survival. Andrew's called from Hackney. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Sheila. You were looking for a historical event that might have some comparison, and I just interject here with Suez, perhaps, is slightly closer to home.
Yes,
and if you remember, that was Britain, France, and Israel attacking Egypt because they thought Nasser was the next Hitler, and America very wisely, Eisenhower said that's not going to happen, and withdrew support, and Suez fell. So I think that they took a wise decision. We were trying to intervene without legal justification, without a mandate from the UN, and without any imminent threat. And America said, no, that doesn't make any sense. We're not going to support you. I should say also that you're saying that if we get involved, we're going to open the Strait of Hormuz and oil it.
No, I'm not saying it's as simple as that. I'm not saying for a second.
You hinted at it, I think. That was a suggestion.
Well,
I think there's every suggestion that sending British ships there might not have that effect. We might just get bogged down. The oil still won't flow, and we will once British soldiers are being killed in that area, then we'll be having a show saying, why don't we get more involved?
Perhaps that's why Keir Starmer reiterated that he and the Allies, and including America, conversations with Donald Trump yesterday, are trying to come up with a viable plan for the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know what that is, and I wouldn't rule out some British involvement in trying to protect it, trying to keep that shipping moving. You might be right, Andrew, that it's a red line for Keir Starmer. I genuinely don't know, but I wouldn't raise an eyebrow for a second if he changed his mind. Thank you very much for your call. Let's get straight to your call. Stephen in Haywards Heath. Hello there.
Oh, Good afternoon. Thanks for taking the call. Just a quickie, really. It's just about, talking about Starmer, finding his backbone. I think, in my own opinion, it's about Starmer focusing on winning the peace afterwards rather than the war in the first place. And bearing in mind this war was based on arrogance, or Trump's misunderstanding of the difference between the art of the deal and the art of diplomacy. And this war was based on his arrogance, trumping, if you like, forgive the pun, the competence. And so as far as Starmer is concerned, I think focusing on what it's going to take to win the peace afterwards rather than embroiling the UK in the war in the first place.
And what will it take, do you think? What kind of things come to your mind when you think about life beyond this war?
I think it's difficult because I don't think we've had a war since the Second World War where there's been a sort of coordinated international effort to win the peace. So if you imagine what Germany was like after the war and the efforts that went into rebuilding Germany.
And Japan.
And Japan, yes, you're absolutely right. I don't think we've had a war afterwards where we've had that kind of international cooperation to rebuild what was destroyed in the first place. So I think it's going to take an enormous international effort, but all the while that Trump is leading the charge, so to speak. I'm not sure that that's going to work.
Are you impressed with Keir Starmer?
I haven't been up to now, I have to say. I mean, and I'll be absolutely transparent, I voted for Labour at the last election in the expectation that they would do the right things, but there's a track record of that not being the case. But up until this issue where he's been standing up to Trump in a way that I think he needs to, then I have been reasonably impressed.
And it was interesting to hear Emily outline it very clearly, wasn't it, about what Donald Trump has been doing and saying in his second presidency with even more vehemence than he did in his first, against NATO, against Europe, the things he said against British troops, the kind of the tariffs, for example, Greenland, the list goes on. That actually, to behave as though he were Barack Obama, and I'm talking about the person now and the way they conduct themselves as president, if to behave as though he's that kind of president, it would be, in a sense, an act of just foolishness, wouldn't it? It would be like a massive ignoring the emperor's new clothes.
I think he's trying to be something that he never can be. I look at a lot of the independent media in America and what they're publishing, and we don't get a lot over here about the kind of stuff that Trump posts overnight. We don't get it over here. So there's a lot of stuff that he posts on his social media site, which is obscene, not sort of sexually obscene, but just obscene in the rhetoric. We don't get to see it over here. I don't know why.
He was talking. Well, I read a fair few of them out when they're published during my time on air, particularly if they're appropriate to the conversation that we're having. But we keep a very close eye on them for the very reason you described. But there was one overnight, I think, where he was talking about might just bomb X location for fun, and I thought, oh no. That's,
Well, but that's the kind of guy. He's and I don't know why.
It's idiotic. It's dangerous and idiotic, is what it is.
But why do we indulge him? Which is why I'm impressed at the moment. Well, I think we're starting not to now. I think it's getting to the point where we realise that the guy is dangerous, and if we continue to indulge him, we are going to be the ones that suffer most than if we actually stand up against him now. Which is why I think Starmer just carries on doing what he's doing, standing up to him, and don't get seduced, if you like, into because of the rhetoric from Trump, don't get seduced into doing something that in the short term might sound great, but in the mid to long term, it's just going to be punishing for the UK.
Thank you very much indeed for your call, Stephen in Haywards Heath. Nathan.